Okay. I'm going to preface this with, while I am taking viewer suggestions, it is the final week of the Overwatch League 2023. So I don't have my chat monitor up. My phone is currently displaying the Overwatch League off in the corner, as far from the mic as possible, with a little bit of volume, so that I can hear kind of what's happening. And when I look at chat, I will see it out of the corner of my eyes. So this is going to be a very strange stream, and I'm going to preface with that as well. If you were here for the last battle stream that I did, I stopped at the end, like when I was done battling. And I just looked at some of my Pokemon, like, up close. And I did that with a lot of, like, amorphous Pokemon. And, you know, in the process, I realized I could probably do a whole entire stream like that, because I did that for, like, over half an hour. So, welcome to today's stream, where that is exactly what I'm going to do. So, for example, so this is the reason I can do this. You can now whistle to tell your Pokemon to stay in place. And then you just get as close as you can with the camera, and, like, look at that. That's a nice texture. And that's basically what I'm going to be doing. I'm really excited to see what this guy's going to look like when he evolves. Because I'm curious if there's going to be any of that cloth texture, or if it's going to be entirely smooth. Because Duskull was kind of interesting. It was entirely smooth. Kind of like what these gray parts here are. But Dusclops, you obviously get this, like, bandage texture. Kind of like if it was a mummy. And I think that kind of fits what it looks like. I had never really known what Dusclops was supposed to feel like. If I touched it, I didn't know if it was going to be smooth, so that's kind of cool. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing. I'm just going to be staring at a bunch of Pokemon up close to see how they look. This is my most recent team. It's not fully trained. This guy needs to evolve still. But I'm just going to, like, slowly look at a bunch of them. Technically, wait, I'm going to set their order correctly so that I don't get confused when I come back to it. And why are they in the wrong order? Okay, so this is the last one on the party. And to make it as minimally confusing for me as possible, I'm going to literally have a party of one Pokemon at a time. And we're just going to hop into the boxes every time and just swap Pokemon out. So, this will be kind of the way it goes. Now I'm gonna grab my Mew, because I know where my Mew goes. And I'm gonna swap Mew with everyone else, basically. So since I have Mew, let's start with Mew. So I haven't looked at what Mew looks like texture-wise. A little too close. Okay. So he looks pretty smooth and glossy. So I guess maybe he is entirely hairless in this. Which I guess would kind of align with how Mewtwo looks. Mewtwo is also pretty hairless. The toe pads, it looks like those are like a normal map. That's a little too close. Yeah, I think those are just normal maps and not like actually modeled. I go straight from the side. Yeah, they're just textures. So Mew is fleshy. You know, flesh guy. All right, let's put Mew away, and let's get into the meat and potatoes. The Pokemon that we're actually going to be looking at today. So one that I have not been able to get a good look at, that I've been curious about how they did, is Denim here, my Jumpluff. You stay in place, please. I am too close. Perfect. So, okay. Interesting. So the body looks like it might be like a little bit fluffy. Like there's like fur to it or something. The little bits that stick off in the cotton, they look like they're just kind of like a little like circle or something. I can't see what the polygon on the end is. It's like just a simple triangle, or if it's a little square. I think the old models, I think, used square polygons. I don't know if this uses triangular one. I think it does. I think the older ones used squares. Yeah, interesting. So, and you can see the cotton does have like a bit of like a cotton texture. It's not very pronounced. I think one thing they could have done with Jump Off is maybe, I don't know how well this would have shown, but they could have added a like a normal map to the cotton. To make it look like it has more texture than it does. Because obviously it's just kind of like these circles with these little sticks sticking out. Oh, they are triangles. You can see on the end of that one right there. So these are probably made just like little like spikes that they stuck through the surface of these circles. Which, like, it does provide, like, the effect they're going for. Pretty well.
Stop it.
Get in the string. You want me to move them? I can move him. I can move him if you need me to. Buzz likes to play with the string as Gwen tries to crochet. Alright, who's next? I am kind of curious what Hypno looks like. Because I know, obviously, the white is hair. We know that. That's easy to understand. But what is going on? Oh, the yellow is furry. Wait. Let me just... Full body hairy. Look at that. Look at that. I still don't know what's going on with this. There is no way this is meant to spiral like this, because it never has. I feel like this is supposed to be solid black, because like if you look at where it connects to the ring, it's solid black. And in the artwork, it's solid black. In every game in the past, it's been solid black. So I don't know why it spirals like that. And I don't know if that's intentional. But there's not much to look at with Hypno. I'm gonna put him away. What happened? Let's take a look at... I haven't seen Go-Goat up close. That's another one I'm kind of curious about is... how did they do the leaves? Because obviously this is like a wreath of leaves. Let me try to get an angle where I'm getting less of the like Fresnel effect. So I think the fur on Go-Goat looks great. The horns look great too. Looks like they might have some normal maps going on, or just that's just the texture. I think it is a normal map. It's hard to tell if the lighting is changing on the like edges of the horns where it like goes inset. Too close if I go there. No, too close still. Just want to see. Yeah, I think it's a normal map. So that looks really nice. Like the horns, the fur, the hooves. Can't really tell. Just trying to get to a spot where he won't disappear. Okay. Hooves look okay. I mean, hooves are pretty smooth. It does look like there's a little bit of a normal map to it that changes how reflective it is. The leaves here, I think, don't work that well. I think the leaf model is fine. Like, it looks very leafy and stuff. But I also think it would be a ton of work to make that look good with normal maps, because when I look at that, I think the most ideal way you can make the normal maps look good is to have each of these be an individual leaf or something like that, or like a little bunch of leaves. But instead they just kind of stuck a leaf texture over it, and I don't know if there's a normal map going on at all. It doesn't look like there's much of one. Maybe a very slight one, but it looks like it's mostly just a texture, and I don't know how well that texture looks like leaves. Look at that. Like, I can see, like, there's little bits of, like, slightly darker looking stuff, and I guess that's the, you know, overlap of leaves, but I don't know. It does from a distance look a little bit leafy, but, like, I don't know. I think it doesn't sell super well, and because it doesn't have a normal map associated with it, it looks really flat a lot of the time. Like, if you look at it, like, from this angle, it doesn't look like none of the shadows look shadowy. They just get blasted out by the Fresnel effect. So I don't know how well it works for Go-Goat here specifically, but the fur and the horns look great. Ooh, this is one I've wanted to see up close. Golden Go, obviously in this looks really metallic. And it's got these little lines here that are kind of like separations between like coins, I guess, and like coin stacks. Or at least it's supposed to give that type of vibe. So the way those look in like Pokemon Go and in Pokemon Home is just a thick line. The shiny has silver lines. The like normal one has like these orangish gold lines, to kind of give the vibe of like shaded gold. I think it looks best when it can have this metallic texture. Without the metallic texture, it just kind of looks like a cheese doodle type thing. Like he's very flat looking, but with the metallic look, like the way it just reflects everything just tends to look really nice. I imagine the way they do the reflections for this type of stuff in this game is they're just using like a reflection map or of some sort. Because like it does look like he's reflecting some green from the environment, but obviously this game's not using like, you know, RTX like ray tracing and stuff like that. Like he's just being reflected on by like some texture that they have that's like, this is the reflection texture for this area. And I don't know if that would be different if I went somewhere else or if he'd still look green, because obviously most of this region is green. There's like the one area that's like kind of orange dirt and the mountain where it's like snow, so maybe those would reflect differently, but at least he reflects green. But yeah, no, I think that one looks pretty good and it works very well. Sometimes this, like a Pelipper one, feels like a bit flat, but I don't know if that's because I'm just not seeing the feather texture that is present. Okay. Yeah, no, it just gets kind of washed out by the fact that it's white. It does have a feather texture. Look at that. The bill looks fine, too. Like, the bill obviously has like some reflectivity, but it's not like super reflective. It's like a little bit smooth. And then I guess it is kind of a weird thing about Pelipper is like this whole underside of its body, literally up to the base of its tail, is just this like smooth skin, which is a little disconcerting to think about. Not gonna lie. Eye-wise, I think its eyes are... I really like eye designs that are like this in Pokemon, just like weird, funky-looking eyes. I think these ones look really good in this game. Like the slight bit of reflectivity on like the black part of the eyes just looks really good. Oops, I did the wrong thing. I do that sometimes. I just like default to hitting boxes as R, because that's what it is in Brilliant Diamond. Is like you go to your Pokemon thing and you hit R and you're in your boxes. Who else do we got that I'm curious about? Let's do Frostmoth. So one of my main complaints with how they render the Pokemon in this game is Pokemon I don't think any of them are allowed to have transparencies at all. So like if you look at Frostmoth's wings in Pokemon Sword and Shield, they're like translucent. And you can see through them to the environment behind. And I thought that was a really cool effect that like some Pokemon utilized in Sword and Shield, but in this game they really don't do that at all. I do love the texture on these wings. That does look really nice. Like when it catches the light, that normal map, awesome. But I think it could definitely use, like, because you can see through a part of a Pokemon to itself if it's translucent, but none of the Pokemon models like have just textures that are translucent. I don't know if that's like a limitation of how the materials in this game are rendered, because like also like the tips of Frostmoth's antennae are like that normally. So that's like a little bit of a disappointment for me that it didn't replicate that effect here. But it's probably for a reason. One thing I will say I'm not a huge fan of, I have to back off a little bit. One thing I'm not a huge fan of is if you look at the antennae, the fur texture travels down the length of it. But if you look at like antennae for a normal moth, just because they're feathery looking, it doesn't mean that they have scales or like hairs going down the length of it. It's because they are like an actual feather. So like they have the central core of the like antennae, or I guess antenna. Each antennae has one. So it's like it has like the central core, and then there's little more sensitive hairs that come off at the sides. So I think that's what they should have done with this. They should have done almost like a feather, where you have like a central structure, and then there's like a hair texture going outward from that. I think that would have looked a lot better than just taking the same like fur texture that's on the body and just putting it on the antennae. But that's like a mild break. And some of these things are like, there is no way someone at Game Freak, assuming that creatures didn't do the textures, there's no way that someone at Game Freak or whichever studio handled these textures went, okay, well, let's take the time to make Frostmoth's antennae look realistic and accurate. So this is another one I'm really curious about. I have not seen Noivern. Does Noivern have like scales? Because it's like it's a bat, but it's also a dragon. And obviously the stuff around the neck is fluff. But is it hairy? Or is it scaly? To me, it looks like it has a fine hair across its whole body. Except for obviously around the neck that has longer hairs. Yeah, you can definitely see on the face, especially. There's a fur texture. Yeah, looking at everything, there's not really any scales to it, which I guess makes sense. Like, it is a bat, but I'm surprised that it lacks like any dragony features as far as like scales would go. The wings, I think, could probably look a little more leathery, but I also would understand why they wouldn't go ahead and go that crazy with them. One thing that would be crazy, and I don't think they would be doing this anytime soon, because there's no way they would be doing like much with like subsurface scattering or anything like that. But using like subsurface scattering could have some nice effects for certain Pokemon, like ones that used to have translucence or something. You could at least have some subsurface scattering that comes through very clearly on like wings, like, you know, on Luna there, could have light shine through her wings. Or like with Moab, same thing, like where the wings would kind of be lit by the color of the lighting behind, like lights filtering through like a bat sweat. Now that probably would look really weird, and that's probably why they didn't do it, but so I think it would be neat. So this is one. Let's see. Oh, Bradley. Take a sit. I want to look at what the pom-poms are like. So obviously you can see that like the main body has these like fine feathers. It looks like that's what they went for on the pom-poms as well, is just like fine feathers, which I guess it makes sense. I don't know what else you would really be able to do with this. One thing I will say, another missed opportunity. Obviously, these look like they are individual feathers. I think these would have looked better if they had rendered them out as, you know, individual feathers. Like, this is one feather, this is one feather, and this is one feather. Like, they're just large, beautiful feathers. You know, or even, like, this yellow is a feather. This, like, darker yellow that's, like, almost greenish is a separate feather. And these ones here are separate feathers. So, like, making them into, like, you know, instead of having one feather, like or three feathers there, it's instead three sets of three feathers. I think that might look a little nicer, but at the same time, I think this looks pretty good. I don't really have any complaints beyond that. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Also, I know that this is super nitpicky. That's like half the point of this is I'm just being super nitpicky for no reason. So. I'm not like actively. This is the other thing though. While I am being nitpicky, I am looking at something I don't think anyone expected people to like really dedicate much time to look at, but that they put there so that at least at game scale, things would look slightly realistically textured. So looking at this. There is a hair texture to the red. It's just that the red is so red, you know, that it kind of blows it out, and you don't get nearly as much of it as you do from the yellow. But you do get the yellow hair texture for sure. Like, you can see it there. That's actually one thing, though, I will note. One of my larger complaints with how they render fur in this game, much of the time, let's see if this... Yeah, this guy, you can see it too. So sometimes the long fur looks really good, but sometimes it looks not long enough. Like if you had, you know, a Pokemon or a person with hair this long, most of this length is going to be one set of hair, you know? Now, obviously, it's going to fall off. That's why it gets thinner. Like some of the hairs aren't as long, so they're going to end. But if you look at it, like, the hairs end pretty quick. They just kind of like stuck a longer fur texture on it, but they didn't pay attention to the fact that like they probably should have used like a human hair texture or something, or just lines, like just some lines, and then maybe broken that up with occasional spots where you see like ends of lines. Like, maybe I'm wrong and that's not how it would look, but I don't know. I feel like it would look a little longer than this does. But I don't know, this still looks pretty good. Again, I think the yellow looks better than the red in the hair. But the hair's also kind of weird because it's like kind of fire. It's like kind of fire, kind of hair. I don't think any of these animations would flare up. Alright, that's enough of you. Oh, this is a good one to look at. I am curious about how Smithy's gonna look. Ma'am. So obviously, everyone knows this hammer is well textured. Like, look at that. Like, it looks like smithed metal. And another cool note, I'm sure you've heard this before, but all of the past hammers appear in the model. So, like, you can see there's, like, the little rattle there. And then around that rattle is the first, like, club. And then a bunch of metal's been added to create the rest of this. So it looks like they used a lung for texture for the, like, head hair stuff, which I kind of expected, but what I'm most curious about is, like, what are they doing with the face, the body? It looks like it's just smooth. So this is skin. That is hair. Interesting. Right? I'm not crazy. That's just smooth. It's just smooth. There's a little bit of metal there, too. I didn't notice that, like, the little plates of metal there. Huh. Did not realize those were there. Alright, Smithy, thank you. And again, I am taking viewer suggestions, so if you want to see, like, a specific Pokemon, do not be afraid to yell at me and go, hey, I want to see this one. I'm mostly going to be going through on my own the ones that I've trained. Because those are the ones I'm most curious about. Because, like, I've trained them, I've seen what they look like, now I'm curious how they rendered them. Too close. Interesting. So this is another one. I think it would benefit from each of these looking like an individual leaf and not just like glossy green. The wood is actually pretty nicely textured though. That looks very nice. But I feel like the leaves are lacking. The olives look fine, like they're reflective and olivey. But I think the, like, wreath of its arms, it looks a little flat and smooth. But I do like the wood, and I do like the olives. Those are nice. All right, let's see what happens. What do you do? So this is just kind of like a oh, a little hole. Engie. This one does not loop very well. So this is something that happens a lot when you use these. So, like, this is using their entrance animation to a battle, or like when they've knocked a Pokemon out, or when an opponent switches a Pokemon out, or if this had Dynamax, this would be what they would do when they Dynamax. They'd be like, "Wah!" You know. But to do that, they have to be in their battle idle, and a lot of Pokemon now have two idle animations. They have their battle idle, and they have their casual idle. And some Pokemon have had this for a long time, where, like, in Pokemon and Me, they use their casual idle, they're just kind of standing there. Arbolive is one that has a battle idle, where it's, you know, makes the wreath with its arm. And in this, it doesn't do that, so it just doesn't loop well. So let's put him to sleep. See, this should be a thing that happens in combat, 100%. Like, they're using it here, where you can, like, choose to have your Pokemon fall asleep. You can look at it like that. I think this should happen in battle. If your Pokemon gets put to sleep, they should go into this animation state. Every time. And I think it's silly that they do. Those silly little legs. That's the weirdest thing to be about Arbella. I originally thought that the 4 bits of wood were the legs and it like hopped or something. No, it has these 2 tiny legs. Hucked up underneath. And I think that's really silly. I don't dislike it, I just think it's silly. Which is not an inherently bad thing. This is what I've been curious to look at. I want to look at Eris up close, because this is, so Annihilate. I have some details that I've been curious about. Okay, so these are just reflective. There's a part of me that at times was wondering if this wasn't reflective, but actually was just translucent, but no, it is. I can see it from here now more clearly, like it is just reflective. Which that makes sense. Its skin has like a nice leathery texture, and yeah, the fur is fur. Not much else to expect from that. Alright. Nope, nope, not picnic. No picnic. Boxes. I'm curious, what do they do for Miss Trevis? Or, sorry, for Miss Magius? Are you just smooth? Like, obviously the gems are gems. Like, those are going to look glossy and smooth. And they do. But the body... Yeah, it's just kind of this smooth texture. There's a normal map separating the light parts and the dark parts. But there's not much more than that going on. Like, it doesn't even have, like, a cloth texture or something. It's just sort of smooth. There's, like, a little bit of, like, a... Not noise. I guess noise. Like, it's, like, a little bit of just, like, a random-looking pattern to it, where it's, like, it's slightly darker or slightly lighter. And that just helps make it look not purely smooth. And I think that looks pretty good, but yeah, it's definitely on the smooth side. Not much going on as far as, like, normal maps go or anything like that to give it a bit more texture. This one I want to look at. So Squawkabilly, obviously, has like this little like oof at the front, like this little pompadour. So the body looks like it uses the same like lightly feathery texture. And this one looks like it also uses like a similar feather texture to like the pom-pom style. Or a choreo. So I guess that makes sense that that's what they would do for this as well. I'm a little sad. People do not like Squawkabilly. I think Squawkabilly is a fun design. Like, I don't think it's crazy or anything. Like, it's not an amazing design. It's not trying to be, though. That's the thing. It's like, it's just a fun little random, rockabilly parrot. And I think that's really funny. Like, I wonder if it's meant to reference, like, a Cock of the Rock or something a little bit, too. I don't know. I think it's a fun one. Did I look at this one last time? I might have. This is one that has disappointed me. At least in looking at it. Not super up close. Yeah, no, it continues to disappoint me. Why does this not have a hair texture? Like, what is it supposed to feel like? This, because now this looks like it's just a bunch of skin flaps, and it's not. We know we know that this Pokemon is actually, and you can sometimes see this during a few animations, like when the hair is split apart, you can see where the legs are in the model itself. But I can't do any of those animations outside of battle. Like, I think when it faints, that's one of the cases you can. And you can see, like, the arms are in there, like, tucked in. Yeah, the arms only go down to, like, here, and then the legs go down to, like, here. And then the rest of this comes out of, like, the hat. There's not really, like, any texture to it at all. So it looks a little weird. Also, I'm noticing there's a very, very small issue. There's like a little bit. I'm pretty sure it's called pinching. Yeah, you can see it right above the mouth, where it's just the way the polygons are set up around the mouth. It causes like a slight edge that's catching light in the way they are rendering light. So if this was done in like a Sword and Shield or something, where this would have been a texture, but if they'd used this model in it, because Sword and Shield used a more, it's like a slightly more cel-shaded looking game, that texture would have been not really noticeable, or like that like slight lip there wouldn't have been very noticeable, because in that game, like the lighting, it moves in stages for the most part. They kind of like fade as gradients between each other. Like, they're not just raw cell shading, but, you know, that would have been less noticeable from more angles in that game. But that's a very small gripe. I think my main one is, I don't know what texture this is supposed to feel like. There's no fabric texture, there's no hair texture. It just kind of looks like Miss Magius did. But I think with Miss Magius it worked better because Miss Magius is like a ghost. It didn't need to have like a texture. I don't know if I touch this thing, if the whole body just feels like skin. And that kind of grosses me out. Like, I don't want to touch this weird flesh witch. I guess that, I guess it kind of fits. It's supposed to be like a little witch theme. If they did another Legends, I think, I mean, a lot of people want like a Legends Kyurem, but more recently I saw someone come up with an idea, like, since they didn't do Pokemon Z, what if they did a Legends Zygarde? That could be awesome, honestly. If they did like a Legends Zygarde or something like that, that would be super cool. But at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, I kind of want them to never do another Legends game. And that's like a really weird take. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with it. But I think that what made Legends really good was the fact that it was unique and a thing of its own. And I feel like it's really hard to make another game in that style that would feel like anything other than, oh, it worked the first time, we should do it again. Which, like, that does feel good sometimes and, like, can be good. But I just worry that it would be too similar. So they'd have to find, like, a really strong way to differentiate a different like Legends game, and I'm sure they could. Like they've done it before. I mean, Legends I look at as sort of a follow up to Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, which I've said that take, and some people have been really mad at me for it. But I feel like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was taking the concepts of Pokemon Go and putting it into a Pokemon game. It was the first one that had just Pokemon spawning in the overworld. When you'd get into an encounter, you just threw balls. Like, you weren't fighting every wild Pokemon. And I think that Legends Arceus takes that concept and rolls with it in a new direction. It's not derivative of Pokemon Go, but at the same time is you see a Pokemon, you try to catch it. You know, the Pokemon are spawning in the overworld, and it feels more like, I guess, that sort of almost Pokemon Go like thing where they're spawning in the overworld like that. I don't know. What is this? Is that a cloud? It's a cloud. I kind of wish the clouds lined up with the clouds in the sky, but at the same time, that is like impossible without like ray tracing or a very well configured cloud system. So maybe it does. Because I guess the clouds are fainter, so maybe... Is there a cloud? I'm gonna watch it for when the for when the sun is no longer behind a cloud. So there should be a cloud moving upward. Where the sun is. Don't really see one. There's another cloud coming. Yeah, I think that would be nice if the next Nintendo system supports ray tracing, which it probably will, based on some of the specs we've heard. I will lose it if they do like an updated version of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet where you literally can like the cloud text, like the shadow maps for the clouds here are like actually clouds moving in front of the sun. I think it'd be really fun, really cool. But I don't know if it would. So, but anyways, let's put Serpenta out. I want to be in a nice, well-lit spot, so let's go here. So Gyarados obviously has a lot going on its body, and it's very large, so it's kind of hard to see the detail well in battle. Still too close. I don't know. Oh, okay, we're pushing it, but we're able to see it, and it's. Okay, so it looks like it doesn't really have a scale texture. That's a little disappointing to me because when I look at Gyarados, I imagine it being like this big scaly dragon thing. It does not really have scales. It just kind of has these weird like little like lumps to the carapace. So not perfect, but it works. And the fins are similarly, they don't really feel like very fin-like, but they are really thick. This one feels pretty fin-like, but that's because I think, no, that is a normal map probably. Yeah, because you get like the slight sense that there's a bone there, whereas the other fins don't really have that, but they're also really thick and almost like Godzilla-like. So that's probably a part of why they don't really have much structure like that, but that could be nice. Yeah, wish it was scaly. Not scaly enough. Yeah, I think the ground in some places looks alright. Like, you know, at game scale, like this brick texture looks fine. The weird part is that it's not aligned with the road. Like, I don't know many roads where they put the bricks in at like an angle like this. Because like if you look here, like the bricks, this whole like square area, like this block, the bricks are all like perpendicular to it, or parallel to it, like depending on the angle you look at. You know, like when it meets with that. This one does not do that, and I think it doesn't look as good because of it. Like it feels a little weird. Like that's not a common idea. I guess that's fair to think that like Gyarados would have like lobster-like segments. I think in specifically in like I think it was New Pokemon Snap, it had scales. So that's kind of where the scaliness comes from like my expectation. So, like yeah, if I go in here, like I think these textures, these are way too stretched. Like look at that. That's rough. That looks very rough. From a distance, it looks okay. But when you're at like a normal gameplay zoom, which is like, this is a normal zoom, like this brick looks good, this brick looks okay, and this brick kind of looks bad. Does not work right. Or it does not work right. It's kind of weird. Like, I feel like a big issue in this game is like texture stretching. Because like some of the textures do look really good. Like I think this dirt texture looks fine. Like that's really high res dirt. Then the grass is a lower resolution. Like you can very clearly see that the grass is not the same resolution as the dirt. Like the dirt, like I can see some pixelation here now because I'm looking at it so close. The grass, it's more pixelated. What are you doing? How is your dirt like this, but your grass like that? Like just repeat the grass texture sooner. But I'm gonna go back to my little corner here. Also like these textures. Very, very low res. At a distance, it looks fine again. Like, it's not that bad. But, like, this is a building you can get really close to. And it's a little low res. Alright. Serpenta, you get to go back to the box. Don't mind his name. Don't mind his name. It's fine. Perfectly fine. So, Cloister, I think, is one that looks really good in this game. Like, I'm going to look at the shell here. Like, look at this shell texture. That is exactly what, like, a clamshell looks like. That's, like, you know, it's obviously, like, slightly low res, but, you know, this is a game rendering a lot of relatively high polygon count models. So I can forgive the Pokemon having, like, slightly lower res textures. Especially, like, you're not going to look at it this close in battle. Like, in battle, it's about this close. And I think it looks phenomenal at that scale. Like, at gameplay scale, like, you're not going to notice it. So I think it looks really good. The Pearl looks pretty good as well. You know, it's got, like, a slight normal map to them. Honestly, I think Cloister looks pretty good for the most part. Like, as you get deeper in, like, you can see the textures on the insides of the shell aren't as high res, but again, at gameplay scale, like, they don't look bad. Like, you have to really get up and in there, and that's not something you're going to do in normal gameplay often. Sorry, I keep choking on my spit. Yeah, I think the lighting, it's weird. There are some cases where I think the lighting looks really nice for a Switch title. Like, I think the way the sun interacts with the camera, and like the little, like, god rays you get coming off of stuff, I think that looks really good. Yeah, like, I think this honestly looks better than most Switch games as far as that lighting goes. I think that, you know, the way the Pokemon are lit, it's the best they've ever been lit. The only downside, and this is a harder thing to implement, it's raining now. That actually emphasizes normal maps. But like, honestly, I think sometimes part of the thing that I question is I wonder if they focus too much on the lighting system in this game. And that's why so many of the textures look bad. Like, looking at the puddle textures, like, the way they reflect light, like, the shader on that is so good. Like, that looks phenomenal. Like, that's just good. But then you look at the leaves, and they look less good. And they don't... Like, light hits them, but it doesn't, like, go through them at all. There's no translucency there when there's sun on the other side. And they don't really do an attempt to simulate that. The closest they get is when they're at an angle, they can catch the lighting in a weird, like, Fresnel effect looking thing. It's not as good. So it's like, I think this game has some, like, really strong lighting areas and some really weak ones. Yeah, no, the buildings and mountains, it's really weird. And also the fact that the game does such an intense job culling out the geometry, and then that geometry is what's used for the collision with the light. So when you're in a spot where the geometry is, like, changing what's visible, sometimes you'll just get shadows that disappear all of a sudden because oh, well, that model is not needed to be seen. Like I saw that a bit when I was looking at like Arbalava, where it would do that. But it's like it happens a lot where you know you have the light behind like one of the mountains over there or something, or even behind like these cliffs and this mountain, like Glaciato Mountain. Like these are large structures. They should be casting a large shadow, and a lot of the time they don't. They just because they're not being rendered in a way that interacts with the light, and so you don't get a shadow from them. And I feel like that's one of the biggest immersion breaking things for me in the lighting in this game is like Breath of the Wild does a really good job of that, where like you know they even have the puzzle where you are literally standing in Breath of the Wild, at least it's the one shrine puzzle where you're standing on like the little pedestal and you have to wait for the sun to pass such that it shines through the hole in the like Rito village, like large stone column, and when the sun shines through that, like you have to wait for the shadow to land such that the platform you're standing on is in the light. And that's something this game could not do. The way it renders the shadows, it ignores that geometry. And it's like even if they were doing it at like a simplified geometry scale or something, like they need something to cast that shadow. Like you need that shadow. If the sun is behind this mountain, I should not see sunlight where I'm standing, you know, until it rises up, and then I should see that shadow cut here and then like go that way and start running towards the mountain as the sun gets higher overhead, you know. And in some ways, I think this game's lighting does a really good job at doing that at a small scale. Like I think that, you know, the human and Pokemon shadows look really accurate in most cases to like where the light sources are, for at least the sun and the moon. Like obviously these light sources, I'm not casting a downward shadow really. Like I now have like these like little foot shadows, but I think I always have those foot shadows. Those are just like little foot contact shadows. But yeah, I feel like a part of this, and this is something that was brought to my attention somewhat recently, and that's that like as tools for game development get stronger, tools for game optimization get weaker. And people are learning these tools that are really good for game creation, but those aren't the same tools that you need to know for game optimization. And so people are making these really poorly optimized games because that's what they're taught to make. And so I think that's a big like thing that I notice here is I feel like this game has some areas where it's really well done and some areas where it's probably overdone to a point where it's now detracted from areas where it's like less well done. Like it feels worse. Like if you look at like the fabric textures on the trainer, those textures are so like ridiculously high res compared to everything else in the game. And it's probably just a texture that's repeating very often, but the size of the pixels on them is so small. Like the hair texture, it looks fine. Like this is honestly what more Pokemon should have for like long fur. But then you get that building. And you get, you know, the Pokemon, where sometimes they have these really nice, crisp textures. Like Lechonk's one. Like, look at that fur. That is so pig-like in the way it's, like, done. Like, the normal maps on it are great. The texture looks really good. But then you have other textures that show up. Like, what is that bush? Why does it look like this? Bro. And I feel like that's kind of like the biggest hurdle that they face is I feel like a lot of the new blood that they're pulling into Game Freak, these are people who were trained on Unreal, on Unity, on, you know, these engines. And then when they were taught, they probably weren't taught how to make the games run efficiently and effectively. They just rely on the game's engines optimizing themselves effectively. You know, like look at what they have now with Unreal Engine 5 having nanite meshes. Nanite meshes would make this game look gorgeous, but it would also mean that every model in this game would be super high poly count. And it makes for games that are like 150 to 200 gigabytes for no reason. And it's just that they're full of these really massive models that have way more polygons than they need. And it's causing an issue where people are no longer taught, if they're in game development and they want to make, you know, 3D models for games, they're not as taught nearly as much. How do I make an efficient model? How do I make a model that looks good but doesn't have a ton of polygons? You know, that's how you get your Garden of Banbans, where you have a remote control that has more polygons than like freaking any Pokemon in this game has. I can tell you that. So I think that's part of the issue here, is that, you know, you don't have people who know how to optimize things unless they're the old, you know, the old blood in the office. But they also want to put more responsibility on new people, because then those new people can become the new old blood, you know, someday. And they need that responsibility and that sort of trust put into them, and be given that opportunity to do something that works really, or where they have to like work really hard, but show their talents are, you know, guaranteed there. Like, I feel like that's something that kind of lacks in some cases. That makes sense. I don't know if that fully made sense, but what I'm getting at is like, I feel like people aren't, like, new teams aren't as aware of how to develop a game that would look good on a Switch. And that's why I think the fact that they said like, oh, well, the whatever's coming next, it runs the Unreal Engine 5 demo of the Matrix. And I'm like, that is an indication that Nintendo's games can start looking good again, because at least games on Nintendo consoles that aren't developed by Nintendo, because now if you can run Unreal Engine 5, people have systems in there that can now make your game look good. Whereas here, you have to know how to make your game look good, and not everyone does. Even if they are experienced veterans of game development, they might not know how to make the game look good or run good or play well on something like a Switch. Because they're like, oh, well, I put it on Unreal Engine 5 and the model just gets downscaled. It just looks right, no matter how close you get, unless you get really, really close. But looking at this one, I really like this texture for the scales. See, this is nice. Those are nice scales. I'm curious. It looks like they're just like sort of like triangles. It's interesting also that the face does not have those scales. It's also interesting that the fins do not have spines. Outside of the obviously the modeled ones, but there's no like normal maps for those little black lines that are obviously like meant to be like some of the bone structure, like the ones in these fins. Though they do look like they have a normal map, and it's weird, they look like they have an inset normal map, and I don't know if that makes much sense to me. But no, I think this one looks generally pretty good. The scales look pretty triangular. Which makes me curious. This is one that I have not trained. But I want to see Love Disc. Love Disc and New Pokemon Snap had heart-shaped scales. What shape are its scales? Here. Interesting. So the scales are a normal scale shape now. The way they did them in this game. It's interesting. And you can tell they did not give a lot of love and attention to Love Disc here, because you can see this white circle. It has its own like slight raised look to it, but also is just on 4 different scales. It's like some Pokemon, they'll give so much attention to how the like different colors interact. Where it's like, oh, well, it's really furry, so some of the hairs will be black and some of the hairs will be white on these like different lines. Let me see if I can find something like that real quick. Where like they clearly paid a lot of attention to detail with how they did the textures to match the fur. And it probably doesn't line up perfectly, but it's I guess it probably masks itself more easily when you do that. So like yeah, you can see here like some of the hairs, like these aren't smooth triangles, they're like fuzzy. There's a fuzziness to how it transitions between them. And a lot of the scaly Pokemon aren't really getting that treatment. I'll tell you that. Let's take a look at Dreadnought. Dreadnought's one that, you know, turtles are obviously they're kind of weird. They're a little bit scaly, a little bit skin. Their shells are scaly though. And obviously here they've sort of simplified it to match sort of what you would think a Dreadnought would have based on the fact that its shell is made of rock. It just looks like rock. But this looks amazing. That looks really good. I like how that looks. Like, obviously, it's a little low res, but again, at gameplay scale, it looks fine. I love the little scratches and scuffs all over its shell. And yeah, actually, you can see here, there are scales on Dreadnought. He's a scaly boy. That's not something I can really see at gameplay scale. Like, he's just too far from the camera, and like maybe I could get the camera like up really close and you could see a little bit on the tail, but no, that actually looks a lot better than I thought it might. Dreadnought looks great. I'm happy for it. Oh, actually, now, let me see. I want to see some of the animations. I'm gonna back up a bit just in case the animations make it too close. Indeed. Sleepy time. Bro is just splayed out. Alright. I like Dreadnought a lot. Dreadnought, very nice. Toxapex is another one, though, that I did want to see up close. What does it look like? It's, you know, it's like a sea urchin... Or it's not a sea urchin. It's a, it's actually a type of sea star. Let's take a look at him. Let's get nice and close. Funk, what do you look like? Smooth. You look pretty smooth. Let me get a little closer and go from a different angle. Yeah, no, it looks mostly smooth, a little bit glossy. Which I guess is fair, but I feel like if they wanted to really sell the Sea Star vibes, they should have made it a much more textured Pokemon. This, it just kind of gives like, yeah, he's a little bit spiky and a little bit glossy. I am curious, what animations does he do? Like when he's like, what do you do when you sleep? I do want to see that. Oh, that's cute. I like the way that the like little dome that it has is sometimes sort of treated as a like as legs. But I think they should do more to sell that through its animations. Like, it doesn't really animate. Whoops. Excuse us as we just face the moon. Like, it doesn't do that with its animations, really. Like, when it's running and walking and stuff, it just hops. I would honestly think it would be really cool if it sort of moved like legs. But I want to see when you sleep. Do you put your arms down? It does. I love that. That's actually awesome. Huge. wait, that's interesting because those arms don't have spikes when they're up. Or no, they do. I just wasn't able to, or do they not? The spikes go in and out. They can move. So when it goes down, the spikes come back out. When it comes up, they go back up. Wait, I want to see that from another angle. Oh, but he moves to face you. Yeah, they just like slide back in. That's actually really cool. I didn't know that was a thing. And so when it sleeps, it puts them into a fully defensive posture. That's awesome. That is a subtle animation detail I did not know. I like that. That's pretty cool. All right, Veluza. I know I've looked at like literally everything on this water team, but I'm curious. Veluza, what do you look like up close? Because Veluza, it moves really fast. Okay, almost this carbon fiber tiny scale texture. I kind of like that. I don't know how I feel about the fins. They feel really flat to me. I have to get a little more distance between me and Veluza to do these animations about it. Mad. So. I wish there were more ways you could see, like... I wish there was a way I could see, like, with the fillets gone. Honestly, I think that using fillet away should result in... Oh! Sorry, I just noticed these are translucent spikes. So, one of the things about translucency in this game is, as I mentioned, it only applies to the Pokemon model itself. It doesn't... You can't see the world through it. But if the Pokemon is on the other side of that texture, or on the other side of that, you can see them through it. You can kind of see that with these spikes. You can see where it connects to the body. Oh. So they're a little bit translucent. Interesting. I feel like Veluza is honestly a Pokemon that might look better in a different game. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's a little bland looking here. I think it might look better in a game where it could have that translucency. So we just saw Greedent. Did this one last time. This is one I love to look at. Hisuian Electrode is one of the best looking Pokemon in this game. Hisuian Electrode and Voltorb both are two of the best looking Pokemon in this game. Like, look at that wood texture. It's so good. Like, the normal maps are awesome. The fact that the underside is a lot smoother but still has a wood texture. It's just smoother and glossier looking. It's so good. This thing looks amazing. Put him to sleep, I'm curious. Just oh, so peaceful. Yeah, no. I think it looks really good. And, you know, the fact that they roll after you, it's great. And, like, to be fair, normal Electrode does the same thing. But I really like how it looks here. Because if I swap them out and go to normal Electrode, he's just smooth, because he's an Electrode, and he's smooth. Just how Electrode is. But Electrode also has, like, a mouth. It has a 3D mouth that Hisuian Electrode does not have because it's, like, painted on. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I love Electrode's design. It's very simple, but it's very effective. Put him to sleep. Oh, that's so cute. You know, obviously, like it rolls after you as well. Like both Electrodes roll. They are Electrodes. That's what they do. Honestly, I feel like it could be a little faster with rolling Pokemon. I feel like you can really have them roll at whatever speed you want, and it looks fine. It's one I feel like they can speed up the animation a bit. But it's just... I have not looked at Titan up close. Like, what does it just have? I imagine it just has a skin texture. That's my guess. Because like, why would it need anything else? This looks like anyone. Yeah, it's just sort of a skin texture. The most I would think would be nice to add would be maybe some like scars, because if you look at actual whales are covered in these like little scars from all sorts of things, and I think that would work really well for Titan, even if they were just in normal maps. But maybe it would look too brutal to have a Pokemon covered in these like clearly healed gashes. It works for Dreadnought because Dreadnought, it's got a shell. So it's like Dreadnought itself was not nearly as injured as its shell was. And that's okay because, you know, it's got a shell. It's supposed to get damaged. How else will it keep it alive? So here, this is one that I think is pretty interesting just to know. So I remember when I first saw the Rockruff line, I was like, what do you mean it has rocks? Because none of it looked really rocky. But here you can clearly see, and you know, once it evolved, I figured, oh, those are the rocks. But with the first one, I couldn't tell. And like, this game does a lot to make it very clear, like, oh, this is fur, that is rock. And I think that is a benefit from how they render these Pokemon, because you could just look at that and be like, oh, that's just spiky fur. Like, what are you talking about? Rocks. Maybe it's just hard fur. But no, it is rocks, and it looks like rocks. Which is nice. Pretty nice. This is one I do want to switch these back in. This is one I do want to look at. So Venus here. Looks really nice, but you can see they did away with something that they had in Legends Arceus, which was Legends Arceus. The fins had bone reds, little like thin, spindly bones going through it. This does not have that, but the texture for the scales here is great. Like, look at that. A little too close. Gotta back up. Like, look at that texture, like especially where it just is kind of like between being flat and being lit. Like, you can see it a lot as it moves. That looks really good. It's a well-textured Pokemon. The glowing effects look awesome, as always. I wish its eyes closed. Like, it clearly has these eyelids. Don't use them. It's a little weird. This is one I definitely want to see. So for a giraffe, it's obviously a large giraffe. Giraffes have pretty short fur, but it's like really coarse, from what I understand. And that's kind of what this looks like. This looks like pretty coarse, short fur. It's interesting to me that it has like this brown coat, but it also still has the black coat from the tail. It has now wrapped its way up and around. The hooves look fine. Yeah, I think this one looks pretty good. Get more distance between names. Photograph, okay. I like that the spikes on the head of Photograph are clearly thinner than where they protrude out the top of the hood. I wish the mouth would close when it slept. I think honestly that's one of the things that Photograph's animation set is lacking is times when the mouth does anything. Because it just doesn't really move. Which, like, I get why, you know. It's clearly its mouth is pretty full of the entire Photograph here. But I think it looks a little silly that it just kind of fits, because on, like, Giraffe Rig, this was a super well animated, like, little chompy dude. He was like, nom 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 nom. Nom 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 nom. But here, he's just kind of He also doesn't sleep, which is weird. I wonder if normal Giraffe Rig's tail sleeps when Giraffe Rig sleeps. I don't have a Giraffe Rig on the save anymore, because I evolved it to have this one. I think it's your normal first, right? But like that's something I could catch one to check. I feel like it. Sneasler's one I'm kind of curious about. It's a little hard to tell in battle because it's a thin, lanky Pokemon. It's not particularly large. It's like, what do you got going on? What is your deal? What do you look like? The answer, short fur. That makes sense. The claws look like they're not fur. Makes sense. This, I don't like. It looks like it's just a loose flap of skin that has some hair on it. But like Sneasel's looks like a feather, and that is just a hairy, gross ribbon of flesh. And I do not care for that. I do not like the ribbon of flesh. I want to see the tail. Yeah, the tail is a similar structure to that. You can even see, like, there is still, like, the crease running down the middle of this little flesh ribbon. Like, it is a feather. But it has a hair. Like, normal hair all down the length of it instead of any feather details. Looks a little weird, gotta say. Not 100% a fan. Meowscarada is one I'm a little iffy on visually. Like, I don't hate it, but I don't know. It's not a favorite. There's a lot of things I don't like about the design. I don't like the claws. I'm not a huge fan of the puffy sleeves. I don't really like the head shape. But at the same time, I think the fur textures look fine here. It's not super easy to see. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it here, but there's like a texture on the underside of the like cape things. And that texture looks really nice. You can kind of see it on the back because it's also on the back. Where it has like these like almost like cell blocks to it. I think that looks really cool. I wish it was more of a normal map and not just a texture on it, but I think it looks fine for the most part. The claws on this thing, though, I'm not a fan of. Let me see if I can... No, I don't think any of the animations show them. Good night. Though, if you want to see a Pokemon that looks phenomenal in this game, Stone Drawers Oh yeah, I can do Skeletor's next. I do have one. I'll do this guy. So Stone Joiner, I was not a huge fan of how it looked visually in Sword and Shield. Here with the rock texture, he looks so much better. Like, it just adds a little bit of texture to him that he did not have, and it makes him look really nice. A much better looking Pokemon. Really silly design, but look at this walk. Goofy. Like I like a lot of the pieces of it. I just didn't like how flat and awkward it looked in Sword and Shield, and I think they did a lot better by adding the texture to it here. This kind of had the reverse Veluza effect. But Skeledirge, I'm just gonna say this off the top, I don't like Skeledirge's flames. Skeledirge flames look bad. Like, look at that. It's so weird looking. I'm not a fan of the random, like, squares of embers. I think this is something that would look better in 2D. This is a Pokemon that would be better as a sprite or in the anime. I don't think this fire works in 3D. But we're not here to look at the fire entirely. We're also here to look at the body. And I'm too close to it. So, as you can see, I love this texture that it's got going on the like tail here, especially because that's the most noticeable one. You can see that in battle on your own very easily. I think it looks really good. This texture on the side here, very crocodilian. Like, this just honestly looks really good. Let's see if I can get... Oh, let's see if I can get like a closer look at kind of like the grayish white parts here. So those look almost like metal, like panels to it. Yes, if they literally just add a zoom in feature on the camera, it would be so nice. It would be much nicer than having to use the Switch's zoom feature and get these like super low res zoom ins. But at the same time, this one's texture looks really good. Yeah, honestly, like if I could just zoom in with the camera. Why there's a golf cart driving by a bunch of times. It's probably not super audible, but it's kind of funny. It's like I wish I could like zoom in, and then by zooming in the camera, like it just was basically like, I don't know about moving the camera, but like it would just like if it rendered the things at a higher fidelity when you zoomed in. But like this here, pretty nice. Let me see, what does the face look like? I haven't really, because like the face is like the one thing you like never look at in battle. So the gray, I can't tell if that's scales or if that's like hair. It's you know, I can't get close enough over here, and it's blocked by the fire over there. That's an interesting detail. I'm not sure what that is. Probably scales? Oh, the sun must be rising. We're getting sunbeams off of him. That's another case of the mountain should block it. So we're getting the sunrise, and now getting sunbeams from my Skeledirge standing up. Let's go, Engie. I wish the little like flame thing didn't just zip. Oh, it goes and sits in the flames when he's sleeping. Look at that. You can see his little head wisp coming up. That's actually kind of cute. I like that. But yeah, I wish he didn't just slide. It feels a little weird. But yeah, no. Skeledirge looks phenomenal in this. I think it's one of the better textured Pokemon. Really, all the Crocodilians, like, I've looked at this one a lot, which is why I skipped him. But Crocodile, also named Mike. Crocodile here. Rain stopped, so normal maps are gonna fade. But like, look at that texture. It's so like, it feels very crocodilian. It looks really good. There's not much going on the spines on the back, and I think that's kind of a missed opportunity. Like, that could have had a bit more texture to it, you know, a little bit of scaling or something, or kind of replicate what actual crocodiles have on their like back spikes, because obviously, you know, it's replicating an actual crocodilian feature. Why not have it look like that feature? But, you know, other than that, like, I think this one looks really good, like, especially like here on the stomach. This looks really nice. There is a little bit of an issue from just these here, like these textures. The colors are independent of the scales, so you'll have this like scale texture, and then it just has a separate color on it, but it's like one scale. Like, you can clearly see. Let's do that, and then we'll lock it. Like, you can see here, like, this scale here is right here. And this scale here, that. So it's like, it doesn't work perfectly. And again, I would prefer it if they did something where the scales were maybe a little smaller, but each of these was a separate scale or something. And then for these sections that come in as little angles, they did something. But again, that's a lot of work. There's a lot of Pokemon in this game. Currently, we're sitting at over 500. And it's a lot of Pokemon to have really highly dedicated scale work to. This is not new Pokemon Snap with like 100 some Pokemon or 200 Pokemon or something like that. So I can forgive the slight, you know, slight issues like that, where it's like, they just, what are they gonna do? Like, take, you know, a ton of extra time just to make one Pokemon scales look really nice, or are they gonna just make a bunch of Pokemon scales that look pretty alright? This is what I'm kind of curious about. Eels obviously are very slippery. I don't know if they have scales. I know Hagfish don't. It looks like this has scales. It's also very glossy. It's kind of hard to tell. Yeah, there's a scale texture to this. I'm gonna Google do eels have scales? Because I feel like I haven't. Do eels have scales? Do eels have bones? Of course eels have bones. Eels do have scales, but they are embedded within their thick skin so that they have a smooth, slippery surface, which is probably why the scales here aren't a part of the normal map and are very subtle. They actually rendered it pretty well by doing that. Look at that. Now, obviously, if I zoom in on this circle, I guarantee the scales just kind of go through it. What else might not happen under the yellow, but yellow is hard to tell. I like the texture, like you can see the little bones and the texture on the fins. I love that detail. That's very nice. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Mouth smooth. One thing I wish they would do. I don't like that the inside of the mouth is just like an inverted circle, and just is like, because in a cell shaded game it doesn't matter, because you'll look at it and you're like, oh yeah, it's just black. But this game has lighting. If they had made that, like, the material for the inside of the mouth not affected by lighting, like it just was always a smooth black, it would look so much better. But they didn't do that. I think what they could have done, if they wanted it to give a sense of depth, because that's probably why they allow it to have some lighting and shading in there. If they wanted to give it like a sense of depth on the inside, they could have done like an inside of the mouth texture, had that fade into a gradient that went back to the black, and made it much deeper into the body, so that you get this like effect where if you look in, it just looks like it fades into the darkness on the inside. You know? I think that would be a lot nicer. And I'm realizing I moved this again without locking. But no, this one actually looks a lot better than I thought it would. Big fan. I imagine this one's going to be very similar to Pom Pom or Ikorio, but I'm just curious, did they do anything different here? Whoop-whoop. So probably the little feathers. A little closer. There's no. Yeah, it has the same sort of feather texture to everything that Pom Pom or Ikorio had. And also, these things that look like individual feathers are, once again, not individual feathers. Mild gripe, but... I'm hitting all the wrong buttons. Mild gripe, but it is what it is. Pokemon Legends Arceus actually had, I would say, a bit better of normal map work on a lot of Pokemon. And I think that's solely because in Legends Arceus there's like 200 Pokemon. And there's not a lot of textures because it's a cel-shaded game. So they focused more on making really nice normal maps for a lot of the Pokemon that make a lot of sense. So this group here is Tandemaus. Or not Tandemaus, Mouthwood. Oh! Is your texture broken? This texture is broken. Uh-oh. This is a thing that happens on this line and on... few other lines pretty often where the textures, yeah, you can see there's like some text on them. Where did you get that from? Is there a sign that I put them next to or something? No, because it wasn't that far over there. Where did you get the text from? There's text on just the one baby. But looking at it, the fur texture is really nice. It's pretty simple. Like, these are very simple designs. But there are 4 of them per Pokemon, so I would expect it to be a bit on the simple side. Oh, that's cute. Ah! I love their little, like, ah! Mouths and ah! It's cute. What are they doing this thing? Your textures, it changed. Cute. Yeah, I like the Mousehold line. I think they're fun. Very simple. Kind of what I expected it to look like. Didn't expect them to be flashy, and they weren't. This is one Hawlucha. I could see some parts being more leathery or smooth, and some parts being more feathery. So I'm curious. Okay, no, the face mask is feathery. I thought that this might be a smooth texture, but no, it is feathers replicating a mask, not a mask. It's not a mask textured thing. Very interesting. You know, Hawlucha looks pretty good. The feet have scales. Love to see it. Very bird-like. He just curls up and like hugs his legs. That's cute. Alright. Back on the ball. Apollo. This is one from a recent team. So obviously, the leaves have a line on them in their texture work, but it looks like that's kind of the extent to which they made this look leaf-like. Again, if this was in PLA, you'd probably have seen like leaf veins on the surface of it, and they don't really do that here, but that's just how it is. But overall, I think it looks pretty alright. The petals look pretty petal-y. I feel like petals are always a difficult thing. They don't have a lot of texture to them. They do have a little bit of veininess on some flowers, but not all. So I think this one looks pretty alright. I think the face could maybe have used some details that like an actual sunflower might have. But that's about it. I think it looks pretty good. That's a pretty good one. Oh no. Broken battle team. Honestly, I probably shouldn't care too much about breaking battle team, because I'm not going to use it from the battle team often, I don't think. I mean, I know what Wigglytuff's going to look like. It's going to be furry. We saw what Jigglypuff was like in Detective Pikachu. This whole line is like that. They are hairy. Very short fur, but they are all hairy. Anger. Show me your rage, sleep. Very content. Alright. Let's look at raw here. Obviously, very smooth looking, but maybe he has little hairs. I don't know. Stay in place, please. The answer is he is smooth. Bro does not have little hairs. Didn't mean to take his picture, but he seems fine. I like Amphiros's design. I think it's cute. I'm gonna assume he sits. Yeah. Gen 2 has a lot of designs that I really like, and it's partially because I grew up on Pokemon Stadium 2. But even so, like, I just think that there's a lot of Pokemon designs that work really well, because I think they struck a nice balance between complexity and simplicity. I think some Gen 3 Pokemon are a little over-complex in some ways, but they're also simple in their own ways. Their colors are definitely unique. Again, this one uses very similar textures to Lechonk. Very pig-like. Looks pretty good to me. Grumpig is a Pokemon that not a lot of people really like, because it's not very good, but I think it's fun. I think it's a fun design. I think it's a more fun design than good Pokemon. I think that's one of the areas where some of the non-game media really excels, is just allowing people to enjoy other designs. I'm sure Grumpig has had Pokemon cards that have been usable at some point. Like the non-video game media sometimes does that, or like maybe it had a good episode. I haven't seen a lot of Gen 3 stuff, and I'm sure it had some stuff from there. This one, the metal looks fine. I think the biggest downside to me about this design is I don't like that the body is just like this random like car made of rock. It doesn't really fit to me. It's, you know, it's not a rock type. It's a steel and poison type, or a poison and steel type. I can't remember which direction it goes. But the rocky Finn, be nice to him. The like rocky car, I don't know. I don't like it as much. I think it would be better to me if it didn't have a car body in the wild. But it does. And then also the fact that it has this car body, but it flies. I think it would be better if it had the car body and was on the ground, or if it had no car body and maybe flew. Let's take a look at some of its... I keep doing that. Some of its animations. So obviously, the tongue just kind of comes out of that cylinder. Because that is its mouth. It's a little weird to me. But I guess it works. Like, sure. Cylinder mouth. It's weird, but it's interesting. I don't know what that is down there if it's not a mouth. But I'm curious. I want to look at the texture on that a little more. See, it almost has like a... It does have a texture to it, which is interesting. I don't know what's going on with it. Like, what is it? It's a little weird, but... I mean, go for it. Go crazy with your designs. I have looked at bubblegum before. Bubblegum is in the thumbnail on this. It is smooth. It's a salamander. Like, what do you expect? Hydreigon does have some interesting textures. So obviously, its body has a lot of fur, and that is fur textured. The scales are limited though to just the area with scales. The rest of it is furry. Like, this whole thing has a little bit of a fur texture. The green might be just skin, but it's interesting. But the only scales are those like armor plates on its chest and on its tail. Everything else is hair or skin. It's very interesting. Cloth has... I am gonna say some things about Cloth here. Wait, let me pull it up. Cloth, I think, looks pretty good for the most part. I have a couple of small complaints. One, his eyes are too low poly. This model, when I look at it, feels so much lower poly than like a lot of others. And I get that it has some really high detail pieces, but like that gradient back there looks like it has more attention to its polygon count than this does. Like, all of the spikes on the fluff are just like, you know, triangle, like pyramid shapes that are like, you know, extruded out like this one, doop, 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 into these little triangles. The eyes feel like pretty low polygon. It's like I feel like all of the polygons on this model are dedicated to the underside of this carapace, where it's smooth, and these legs, where it's also smooth. Additionally, I don't like the fur texture. I think it looks really awkward on this model. It just doesn't look good. It feels like it goes in random directions that don't match the direction that the spikes are going. And to be fair, it's really hard to account for that in the texture work, but I feel like that would make it look a lot nicer. Put him to sleep. That is cute, though. I do like how he just kind of like goes. But yeah, at the same time, I really like Cloth's design. I just think some parts of it are lacking. And honestly, I think it would work better in a cel-shaded game, because I think the fur wouldn't be as noticeably just a bunch of spikes, especially if it was in like X and Y or Sun and Moon, where they didn't really have much of like a Fresnel effect. But at the same time, I think it's a very fun design, and I think it would look really good in the anime. I think it would look really good in not this game. I think it looks a little shaky in this game, and I think it's a bad... It's a problem when this Pokemon is scaled up a lot as a Titan, and you have this texture very apparent. Because, you know, he's standing on your screen, like, taking up, like, this much of the space. And he's huge. And then he has these, like, really flat-looking puffs on its legs and with these really weird, awkward-looking hairs. So Cloth has a couple issues with how it looks in this game, even though I love its design. Now, Quillfish does not really have much in the way of scale. It's a very smooth body. I'm going to preface this with that. You can see it does not really have a scale texture to it. It might... I can't tell... Yeah, it does not look like the skin texture has... It's just a skin texture, like it doesn't have even like a hint of scale texture to it. But at the same time, I think it looks really good for a Pokemon that really, at the end of the day, has a very simple design. It has like 4 colors. It has the lips, the like dark blue, the greenish yellow, and the yellow. And then it has white and black. So it's like... It's a very simple looking Pokemon. And I think this texture does a good job of making it not feel too simplistic for this game. You know, it doesn't feel like it's out of place when you see it. Espathra, I have some words. So, one, I do not like this line's design, really. But look at this. So, brown scarf on, like, brown silk on the head, white silk on the head. Brown silk, white silk. Brown silk, white silk. I don't know if on the normal one, it's orange silk at this distance. But that feels like an oversight where this, at a lower level of detail, because it's not really... Yeah, it is the mid-level model. You seem to get like a darker color to the white silk on the head, but nowhere else. So that has to be that the texture on the lower poly model is just wrong. They did not optimize it correctly. But let's take a look. So Espathra, I forgot to tell you to stand close. If you look at it up close, it's not super apparent. So obviously there's some feathers going on the body, but once you leave the body, it's like, what is going on with these? And I think they're meant to look like silk. Like they have this kind of glossy look to them. You know, it looks like a very fine cloth. That's my guess as to what this is going for, is that this is like a silk texture. But I think it doesn't really convey well in this game because it's not high enough res. And honestly, I think silk is a very difficult thing to show without having ridiculously high resolution textures and normal maps and stuff like that. So I think this one looks a little meh. I do not care for its design at all. It's not what I like. I like what the Pokemon can do. I think its stats are not bad. I like its signature move. I do not like how it looks. And this is obviously a shiny. I don't think the normal one's any better than the shiny. I honestly prefer the shiny a little bit. Not a fan of either. When I saw the first one, I did not think it was a bird. I thought it was like a weird like little jellyfish thing or an algae clump. When I found out it was a bird, I was like, what? What do you mean it's a bird? And I guess it's supposed to look like an ostrich egg, but I do not see it. So this is another one where the leaves are not textured. Despite being a really large part of the body, they don't have a leaf texture. There are no veins on these leaves. And again, I think this Pokemon would look so much better rendered like it was in Legends, like leaves were in Legends Arceus. Also, I think, like with a lot of the leaf textures in this game, these flowers do not have enough contrast to convey to me as a bunch of flowers. Look at this. Look at this guy. Oh, he's gone. I went into the city. I disappeared him. I wanted to look at the, I wanted to look at the Sawsbuck. Because I don't have a Sawsbuck. Now he's gone. And I don't know how many entrances to the town it will take to find another one. It's unfortunate. I was gonna look at his leaves. Oh well. Back to town. Goodbye, everybody. Fade into oblivion. Braviary does have pretty good textures though. Like it's feathers, baby feathering. Like you can see it on the wings from here. That the wings have a feather texture. And it looks really nice. It's the same one that's on the body. I think this is a really nice feather texture. It looks really good. Again, the lines of color, they don't really have a feather separation. I think they just blur them slightly like they do with like the short fur, but I think that worked with the short fur really well. With the feathers, you need to have the feathers feel feathery in the spots where it doesn't, where it like changes color. I don't think this game has done that particularly well here with this model. But the feathers on the face do look really nice. Like those, like that's the hero feathers of sort look phenomenal. Like they look very feathery. I don't know what else to say. Like they look good. Not a lot else there does. Some Voltropes here. Goodbye. Oops. That doesn't do anything, but yeah, see, you can see the feathers, not the feather, the leaf texture there. I think it works a little better than a lot of the other leaf textures. Like Sawsbuck's leaves, they look pretty good. Gotta say. That looks so much nicer, and I think it's just that it's easier to see contrast in the shades of red that they chose. I think one thing I would like to see. Oh, where's Sawsbuck went? Oh, there he is. One thing I think would be nice would be more variation in the color. So, like, if it went from, like, if some of them were more red, some of them were more orange, and some of them were more yellow, that would be a slight tweak to, like, the design of the Pokemon itself through the textures, but I think that it would be a fitting sort of way to render it out. Alright, this one I just got, and I'm really excited to show some details I noticed when I was trading it. So as a Sandshrew, one of the first things I noticed, also I love this animation, it's still absolutely phenomenal. It's great. That's so good. Very nice. So one of the things I noticed is that Sandshrew had this sort of like, what you see here, this almost leathery, scaly texture to it. But the chest that's white is not. It's actually furry. I thought that was a really cool thing to note, was that like the chest of it is this like probably like coarse fur or something, and the outside of its body is using this like leathery stuff. Oh, I made him fall asleep. But then also the normal maps on these spikes are so good. They look like rhino horns. Like they look like keratin spikes. It looks so good. Phenomenally rendered. I love that. Like whoever was working on Sandslash's textures and Sandshrew's textures, like hands down, amazing work. Like that's so good. I love that. Another one from Kitakami. We have Mightyena. Mightyena. This is a game Mightyena was designed to appear in. Like this type. Look at this fur. This is the best long fur in the game. hands down, literally the best. This looks so good. This is what every Pokemon with long fur should have its long fur look like. This is the type of fur texture they should have used for the hair on Pyroar. And they did not. This looks so good. I love how it looks. Mightyena is a little awkward from the front, but the whole thing, like, it works so well. Mightyena is not a good Pokemon, but my god, does it look good. Like, look at him. It's awesome. Actually, look at her. She's awesome. But yeah. Appleton was one that I was kind of curious to see, because I was like, what is it going to look like? So one, small. Two, if this was a Legends Arceus style game, those leaves on top would have veins. They would be leaf-like. They are not leaf-like here, I think. He's very excited to stand on me. No, you're purring so loud. You're purring so loud. The body just sort of has a skin texture. The apple stuff, like the crisp on top, it's just kind of glossy and smooth. I think it could look a little glossier and like almost like sticky sweet type looking stuff. But the apple texture looks really good. Applin's was also good. They probably just use the same texture across that in both of these. It looks really good. I'm sure Flapple looks good too. I have not evolved a Flapple, but I'd imagine the like peels have that same sort of stuff going on. And also just a cute detail I noticed. If I back up a bit, if I turn on this, it's gonna surprise them, I think. I don't know, it did not surprise him. Oh, okay, that's the animation that does it here. So when it gets hurt or surprised, the little apple piece on its head like bounces up into the air, and I think it's really cute and cartoony and fun. Alright. Knocked Out. What's next? Finn, you're drooling on me. Thank you. Stop it. Stop wiping it on me. Stop this. Cease your drool, sir. He drools when he's happy. He gets all over me. I know you have the lovies, but you gotta keep your lovey juice in your mouth. I see it. It's like bubbling out of his mouth. He's just like this little babbling brook of drool. You're a gross little boy. It's in your fur. There's a droplet of it just in your fur right now. I see it. Slowly rolling its way as a bead of water towards me. You're such a strange boy. Why you do this? Why you do this? Ugh. He's like having a toddler. But anyways. Just send that back in. Knocked Out. Knocked Out and Hoot Hoot have the same sort of feather texture, and a lot of Pokemon have this sort of feather texture. So you can see it's like the sort of fine feathers. One thing I think that doesn't work well is, you know, there's obviously that like structure to the wings, like that iconic, like almost, I don't know how to describe it. Like it's a very blocky structure. The feathers on the wings are big feathers, and they do not match that structure at all, which is again a bit of a disappointment. Any Pokemon that does that, I'm not a huge fan of that happening. So, almost good, made a little worse. Oh, you're biting me. Magcargo, on the other hand. So, I don't like the lava. I talked about that when it was a Slugma. The lava, it's not strong enough to me, like it doesn't give off much contrast. I think that Cargo's textures look a little better than Slugma's. The rock looks great. The glowing like flames on the rock, it looks great. One thing I haven't noticed, does it have the flame tongue that pops out at all? Usually attack, like battle animations would have it, but I'm not seeing it. So they might have gotten rid of that flame. Okay, let me see. I'm going to actually fight something. And I'm going to watch that side, because usually when it uses a special attack, a tongue of flame pops out of the side, and they might have gotten rid of it. Alright, so I need to look for the side that has the flame hole. Right here. Because you look on this side, there's no flame hole. So I'm going to see what happens when I use flamethrower. Oh, it does have it. Okay. He still has it. He just doesn't use it in a lot of things. And they removed it, because the reason I was wondering is because they removed it from the sprite. Like, it's box art sprite, and it's party sprite. Like, it does not have the tongue of flame, but in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, it did. So I was curious. I'm like, do they still have the little flame there? They don't. So now we've gotten through most of the ones that I have here. I haven't looked at everything, but like the ones that I've avoided are ones where it's very obvious. Like Heracross, it has a carapace. You can see it no matter where you're at. It's very easy to look at. Tatsugiri, it's just smooth. Like if I pull him out, I don't think he has any scales or anything, or the rice has any texture. What was going on? I heard some cheers. Yeah, like the rice has a texture actually. That's right. He doesn't have a happy animation. I don't know if that's intentional, but Tatsugiri does not have a happy animation. It just sits there and it's idle. Yeah, none of these like puff up the rice. I don't think. Does he not have a sleep animation? That's interesting. I wonder if those are limits imposed by the fact that Tatsugiri has the different like wild animations. Like maybe each Pokemon only has so many animations they can have. Because Tatsugiri does not have a sleep animation. Really? If I just left him out like this, he would never fall asleep? That's interesting. Didn't know that. Tatsugiri is an interesting Pokemon. Gima Bobima. Gima Momima. Keep your droll to yourself, please. Keep your droll to yourself. He has lovies. You want him? Yeah, he's follow you anyway. Him tail so fluffy. Look at him tail. Is it fluffy? Why him tail so fluffy? So yeah, like, you know, smooth.
It's like a brick log.
I'm so happy. I saw a bead of drool leave his mouth and slowly roll down his fur on his side until it fell onto my shirt. It like literally just like a little perfect bead. It was like a dewdrop of drool, just slowly. He got lovies. But yeah, like Palafin and Finizen, obviously they're just smooth. They don't really have much else going on. Sleepy. Yeah. Not a lot going on there. What else we got? So yeah, like the ones that I didn't look at are a lot of the ones that were like that. B52, like it's probably got the thin feathers. But yeah, a lot of the ones I didn't look at, you know, Goodra, Toxicroak, they're just smooth textures. There's not a lot going on. But now I've got all of these ones in my boxes that I can look at. I haven't seen a recent suggestion pop up at all, but I'm gonna see if there's any that I want to look at just out of my own curiosity. Because this is where I looked at a lot of them before, as I was looking at ones from here. Stunky, I'm curious which long fur textures it uses. Does Stunky look good or does Stunky look bad? The answer is... You Mightyena, Stunky? Nope, Stunky does not look as good as Mightyena. What a shame. Butt face. Sleep, Stunky, sleep. So yeah, Stunky, not a lot going on there. This is one, I think Ekans has some scale textures. So let's take a look at it. Ekans, do you have scale textures? In place. I would think he does. Yep, look at that. Oh, such that he doesn't go away. Look at that. That looks pretty good. The rattle, they're using the crocodile textures, but that works because that kind of how snake rattles look. The only thing I don't like about this one is if I have him face me, I don't think he has scoots at all. Maybe on the underside of that yellow, but I don't have a way to view that, I don't think. Here, wait, let me see if I can do a trick that I learned. So this is what I did. So if you noticed, my muck in the thumbnail is from a below angle, which should not be possible. But I got my muck to go this way. And get too close to the edge. And fall off the roof. So one thing I am noticing, they don't use an animation set for Ekans where it just like rotates smoothly and like has the tail kind of trail behind it, which is unfortunate. But also I think all of these Pokemon have, like, I don't think any of them have like a physics-based animation at all. Oh no, he can just fall down. Okay. Well, it was worth a shot. But yeah, my only complaint is that I didn't see scoots, but maybe the yellow underside has scoots. That's not something easy to see. So Viper looks pretty good from what I remember. Let me take a look though. So Viper, what do you look like? This Viper's a little silly because he doesn't like slide or slither at all. He just kind of like slinkies. Yeah, but he looks very good. Again, does not appear to have scoots, but he doesn't slither, so I can forgive them for that because like instead he has these little like nubs that he walks on. They're kind of hard to see. There's like 2 of them on each of the like little up and downs at the downs, and those are, I imagine, what gives them grip. Like they took that into account. Like, how does this thing move? Like that. Let's see, what's one I would like to see? I'm curious, what did they do for Swablu? For like the clouds. And does it have feathers? My guess is yes, feathers, and the clouds are like the cotton texture. Clouds are definitely the cotton texture, and the body has feathers. I was correct on both things. Good job, me. So I'm gonna shift my position so that I'm not behind my microphone. Just caught that. Let's take a look at Happini. Furry. Makes sense. The fake egg is not egg-shaped. Oh, I didn't realize that it has a darker color underneath that, like, stone. Sleep. Yeah, it's just a sitter. Actually, wait, what is Zorua? Is it a fur texture? Can place, please? Or is it just smooth? What do they opt for? It looks like it is a fur texture. It is not the Mighty Yena long fur texture. It's disappointing. But yeah, it's definitely a fur texture. It just moves in like an ethereal, wibbly wobbly way. Alright. It just looks sad. He has no rage. Alright, I want to look at Kamala. I am imagining that the stump has a nice wood texture, and the body has fur, but let's see what the fur looks like. Okay, yeah. The fur looks great. The nose has a very koala-like texture as well. And the little log that it holds, the little stump, the wood that's like cut off looks really good. I don't know what type of plant this is supposed to be though. Like this looks like a weird texture to me, but maybe there is a bark that looks pretty much exactly like that. But no, I think it looks pretty good. Nicely done on Kamala. What is DurchBurch? That's what I want to see. Is DurchBurch just smooth, or does it have scales at all? Oh, he's not just smooth. Look at that. That is actually a very finely detailed texture. What are his wings like? What do those look like up close? Kind of look like they just used like the small feather, which that's fair. They almost look like bug wings, which is kind of why I was curious. Because I remember as a kid I used to think that DurchBurch was like a bug type or something, and not a pure normal type. I forgot about this Citadel. I have a team to put you on. Don't mind me, I just have to go toss this Citadel into... this team, and then I would just have to change his name. And determine how I would need to make his stats, but that team's ready. That theme team is done. That's exciting. I'm not going to train it yet, because none of them are in Kitakami, and I want to focus on Kitakami Pokemon, but... anyways, I was in Ice. I want to look at Hisui and Avalugg. So obviously normal Avalugg is just ice. There's not much more to its textures than that. So like, let's take a look at Hisui. Obviously, so it looks like there's icy glossiness to the ice on top and to the like plow blade that it has, but the rest of it is this actually a really nice rocky texture, and I really like that. See some animations. Alright. Yeah, that sure is a Hisuian Avlog. Yeah, it looks like a Frostlass. I'm kind of curious what its bodily textures are like. Like, is there any hair or anything, or is it just like ice and skin? Like, what is that bow? Okay, can you stay in place, please? So obviously the ice on top is icy. Okay, so the white kind of just has like a skin texture that could be like almost a snow texture. The ribbon doesn't really have much of a texture to it. And what is this like weird like ribbed structure here? It's just skin texture. Alright, well, that's Frostlass. Delibird, I think it just has like the small feathers, but they look really good from what I remember. So Delibird, you come here. Sweet. And yeah, he looks really nice. I'm gonna look at the tail, because the tail is obviously like it looks like a bag, but it is connected. It is the tail. So let's take a look at that. Also feathery. Okay, I guess that makes sense. All right. Thank you, Santa. Now, obviously, if I look at the Iron Bundle version, it's just smooth. Like, I'm not gonna really look at these ones because they are just smooth and metallic. Otherwise, they're the same. Like they're all pretty much the same as each other. Like they have, so you can see there's like a little bit of like a carbon fiber looking texture on that. The body is metallic and the eyes are like dots. That's about it. What do we do? Because like normal Delibird has like fluff on the back. Okay, so it just has like this like little zigzag texture. Oh, it powers down. I actually really like that. That's interesting. I like the little like low power mode it gets into, where only the eyes have any light effects to them. That is actually better than I thought it would be. So now I want to look at Iron Treads and just see the animations and how they play out with it. So like obviously same type of deal. The textures are all really nice, but they're very much the same across all of them. Man. Oh, that's cute. He like reveals his little happy face. Angry. Meh. Oh, it kind of rocks and enters a low power. That's very cute. Honestly, I really like their sleep animations more than anything. They're really good. Wow, okay, that's pretty good. Let's look at Toad School. Because it's a mushroom. Well, let's see how mushroom is texture. Oh my god! I didn't realize there's a back-facing transparent texture around the top of it. What the heck? How did I never notice that? The green dot is on the outside, but the brown that you see is on the inside. Huh. It's really weird. Ooh, I like the legs, though. They do look very mushroomy, and honestly, I can tell a little bit. Let's see if I can get up and under this. Yeah, you can tell a little bit. This does have a very mushroomy, like, gill texture to it. Let's have him run after me. Just want to see him run. It's so goofy looking. I love it. Alright, that one's pretty good. Grass types I'm curious about. Let's see how mushroomy they got fungus. I've seen a Moongus from a distance, but let me see fungus. Tweet tweet. Yeah, I gotta get way closer. How close can I get before it disappears? Very. So it is so small, it is very difficult to see the detail. Like clearly there is a texture to the top of it, but I want to see, does he have a nice mushroom texture? I honestly don't know if I can get my camera. Been under it. Too short. I'm sure it might. That's interesting. I've seen Bellsprout. No, it looks really good. Let's take a look at Root Bonnet here. So these have a nice texture to them. Yeah, the body has a very similar texture other than that, though, to the... I keep accidentally taking pictures. Very similar texture to the way they look in Fungus. Can we arrange? You just kind of get sleepy. Alright, fair enough. I do want to see this one's sleep animation, because now I'm obsessed with the sleep animations of the future Pokemon. You, stay in place, please. Good running everywhere. So obviously, same deal. They all look kind of like this. You sleep. Yeah, full power down. I like that. Pretty nice. I think if there's any Pokemon that I have yet to look at that I was really curious about. Not really, though. I am curious about Iron Jugulus, specifically, like, of the futuristic Pokemon. Just want to see its general... I do like that Iron Jugulus, its entire face, is the, like, pointillated grid thing. I think it's really cool. So let's take a look. Sleepy time. Do you full power down? It does. The whole face just turns off. Oh, it's got a cute happy face. Angry face. Ah. It's weirdly shaky when it flies. Oh yeah, this is unnerving. It's like. Why are you so shaky? Weird. Oh. Alright. Let's look at Sableye, and I'm almost done for today. I think this has taken quite a while. I do not want to connect to the internet. Can I disconnect, please? I don't need to be online. I'm just looking at things. Alright, so let's look at Sableye. So, yeah, it has a very simple texture and then the jumps. Which is kind of what I expected. Did I get... Does he just smile randomly on occasion, or... Did I get close enough that I went into the model and saw the mouth before... I did. Okay, I went in and saw the teeth. That's funny. You jump in, you can see the teeth. Or it can fade out and dissolve into not being visible. Let's see. This will be the last set of ones that I look at. Let's look at Swaddle. Swaddle also has a leaf. But the leaf is so big, I am going to be very disappointed if they do not have adequate leaf textures. So they have some leafy veined stuff going on, which is nice, and then there's the stuff that's inherently a part of the textures of the leaf. It would go against, like, it would be off model to not have, so like they keep that, which like makes me think, like, why didn't they keep that on Muck? They could have kept it. Yeah, pretty good. I do want to see, what is Spinnerack? Is Spinnerack smooth? Is it hairy? My assumption is smooth, but it could be hairy. It is a spider, and a lot of spiders are hairy. I like that he jumps. Cute. The answer is maybe a little hairy, but it looks mostly smooth. It might just be a skin texture. You have, yeah, Angie eyes on the butt. Interesting that he stands higher when he sleeps, but I guess spiders do kind of do that sometimes. They kind of like fall up. Okay. Oops. This is going to be a very tricky one to look at because it's very small. Like, look at that thing. Tiny. But we'll try. So yeah, it looks like it just sort of has a fur texture, and then the wings do have bubbling texture. Looks pretty good. Very tiny, though. Let's look at Venonat. Venonat has a lot of hair. So I'm curious. Yeah, honestly, they chose the right length of fur texture, I think, for its fur for the most part. I think the ones at the top could realistically be done better having a longer fur, but I think that looks pretty good. When it sleeps, does his eyes turn off? Yep, they still do. That is an essential part of Venonat's design. If the eyes do not get darker when it goes to sleep, or faints, you have done a bad job with your weapon. So this looks pretty good. I'm gonna look at Surskit. I'm curious what Surskit looks like. Really? Looks pretty good, just smooth. I guess makes sense. Stole a bug. I looked at some legendaries before. Moltres got into the thumbnail. We looked at that one as well earlier. Rayquaza, I feel like I looked at it on stream. It's just sort of scaly. Let's look at Miraidon, and that'll be my last one. Is this the box art Miraidon? Full active mode form. The mean one. So as with a lot of the futuristic Pokemon, very similar stuff going on, but when he sleeps, he does enter a power down state. So now I'm curious. I'm gonna leave him out for a bit and let him fall asleep on his own. Because I noticed when he slept, you could see the, like, wheel structure, yeah. Oh, look at that. That's interesting. So it's a glowing thing that just forms around that wheel structure and around the lower part of the tail. It's really interesting. Now if I move... Whoop. Oh, the tail actually, like, splits apart to do that. That was even more interesting. So it, like, extends into that. See what happens if he falls asleep again. Gonna do it. They usually do. Doesn't take too long. Whoa, 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 slow down. He's having a lot of fun, though. Just encircling me. Back asleep. I want to see, does your tail just, like, shrink up? Stop running around me and go to sleep. Go to sleep. I don't think he's gonna go to sleep now. He's determined to stay awake. I've done this for like 2.5 hours. I knew that I could stream this. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Stop being happy. Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Do it. He's very determined to just be happy and not go to sleep. Will you go to sleep? Bruh. I don't think he wants to sleep. Okay. Yeah, it does. So then when I start moving... Whoop. Yeah, it just extends. That's really cool. Can't keep up when he's in that form. That's funny. I think they should have made it so that he could. I feel like Koraidon could. Yeah, that's really... I looked at a lot of them. Wow. Let me just put my current team back in to my party. Except for my Dusclops. I'm going to just evolve them and let this Arceus at some point, so I'm going to put him there. But I just spent the last like 2 hours just staring at a bunch of Pokemon, so I think that went pretty well. I might do another one, but like I stared at most of the ones that I've got, so there's not a lot left that I could look at. But if I do another one of these streams, I might do it like after the next DLC comes out, and we can look at just like all the starters in detail and like look at them all. Also, since I'm going to do this one through home, I'm going to put away his hold item and then send him off. That way you can evolve it. Yeah. So, I'm going to send out one last time. My Sand Slash. Just set him nice and in the face of the camera. Look at that. Stay in place, please. Okay, let's get a nicer view, and we'll just have Bounder be the last thing we get to see on the stream. Just standing there. Look at him. He's just poised and ready to vibe. He'll probably fall asleep soon. But yeah, thank you so much. If you joined me live or after the fact, either way is cool with me as long as you had some fun. That said, I'm going to go do human things as humans do, and you probably should too. If you did not think I could get 2 hours and 45 minutes out of just staring at Pokemon, you were wrong. I don't know what I'm going to do next time, but we'll see when we get there. Yeah, this was fun. I was just curious about how they textured different Pokemon and was able to get a good look at a lot of them, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, I will be back probably on Wednesday with something. Don't know what yet, but we shall see. So, alrighty. Farewell. Goodbye. Heading out. I'm just rolling my way over here. Apparently they don't fall asleep if you tell them to stand. Good to know. Alrighty.